All right, good evening again, folks. I am Sophia Yates, and this is Frankly Speaking. Welcome again into my library. I've been touching on the subject of communism, socialism, fascism, and I want to bring attention to the present day group that's been really wreaking havoc throughout our country this past election and over in Europe, and they're spreading, and they've been around for a long time, and I don't think people realize that. There's a lost history of Antifa. I'm going to touch on that. And the origins of the word Antifa, shorthand for decentralized militant street activism associated with its own aesthetic and subculture, might be murky to most readers. It's a communistic party. It really is. A socialist communistic party. And half of the kids today that have joined in probably don't even know that they're part of something that was really, a dangerous party years ago. Even in Germany, few know much about the popular forms of anti-fascist resistance that coined the term. The movement's short but inspiring political legacy proved too uncomfortable for both Cold War-era German states and was ignored in schools and mainstream history. Today, its legacy is almost entirely lost to the left. It's just frightening what's going on, and we can't let this spread any longer. It's got to stop. Okay, so why was the Communist Party formed? The Communist Party USA was founded in 1919, 3 years after the Russian Revolution. It started as a dead organization composed of foreign language and native-born American groups, but the factions were ordered to merge by the Soviet Union, which helped fund the Communist Party USA. Who is in the Communist Party? One word, Schumer. A communist party is a political party that advocates the application of the social and economic principles of communism through state policy. The name originates from the 1848 tract Manifesto of the Communist Party by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. It is often said what is past is prologue, and when it comes to collectivism, a clear understanding of history is vital to preventing these circumstances from arising yet again. Is there a Communist Party in the USA? Yes, there is. The Communist Party USA, CPSUSA, is a communist political party in the United States, established in 1919 after a split in the Socialist Party of America. It has a long, complex history that is closely bred with the U.S. labor movement and the histories of communist parties worldwide, formed in 1919. As the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States intensified in the late 1940s and early 1950s, hysteria over the perceived threat posed by communists in the U.S. became known as the Red Scare. Communists were often referred to as Reds for their allegiance to the Soviet red flag. What is Antifa running around with? Half of those kids don't even know what they're doing. What is the Socialist Party in the USA? The Socialist Party of America was a multi-tendency democratic, socialist, and social democratic political party in the United States, formed in 1901 by a merger between the 3-year-old Social Democratic Party of America and disaffected elements of the Socialist Labor Party, which had split from the main organization. What does the Communist Party stand for? Solidarity with workers of other countries is also part of their work. They work in coalition with the labor movement, the peace movement, the student movement, organizations fighting for equality and social justice, the environmental movement, immigrants' rights groups, and the Health Care for All campaign. Okay, so they've infiltrated all of our groups that people who belong to them believe in good things, but they don't realize that what lies beneath is the deep state. This is where it's getting real tricky here now. People are being duped. They don't realize what they're fighting for. And in the end, what happens if they win? You all lose. You liberals become a communistic party part. Is there still a communist party in Russia? The party is often viewed as the immediate successor of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was banned in 1991 by the then President Boris Yeltsin. It is the second largest political party in the Russian Federation, after United Russia. The youth organization of the party is the Leninist Young Communist League. So you see what they're doing. They have really infiltrated our youth here in the USA, led by George Soros, who was also his mentor, someone he looked up to, was this Ropa guy. Okay. So we know that George Soros, okay, he claims as his mentor the philosopher Karl Popper, author of The Open Society and Its Enemies. He influenced him with his writings and his thinking. Soros said in his book Soros on Soros, Popper was betrayed by Soros and others as opposed to threats to democracy and even opposed to Marxism and communism. But Popper's anti-communist record is weak, so weak that it practically disappears under the weight of his own work. Popper had been a communist in his own youth. Prior to 1945, Popper did not use totalitarianism to describe communism even once. Like many liberals and socialists, he withheld judgment on Soviet Russia. The Great Purge trials coincided with the Popular Front and with Russia assuming after 1935 that the leading role in resisting fascism. The Nazi-Soviet pact was a shock, but within 2 years, Russia was again on the Allies' side, carrying the brunt of the war. Popper's mute criticism of the Soviet Union in the Open Society reflected his wish not to damage the war effort, but such considerations would not explain his warm rhetoric about Soviet social engineering. He had still not made up his mind about the Soviet experiment. The book goes on to claim that Popper adopted an anti-communist position later during the Cold War. One can find conservative praise for Popper and had conservative friends and associates. The Hoover Digest published an article by Piers Norris Turner, hailing him for articulating the inherent threat of Marxism. One, Popper had been a former Hoover fellow. Alright, so the article said, Popper's Open Society has always had a wide readership and influential champions on both the left and the right. Isaiah Berlin wrote in 1963 that Popper's Open Society contained the most scrupulous and formidable criticism of the philosophical, historical doctrines of Marxism by any living writer. National Review recently ranked the book number 6 on its list of the 100 most important non-fiction works of the century. George Soros, who first encountered the Open Society as Popper's student at the London School of Economics, founded the Open Society Institute to propagate Popper's ideas, particularly in Eastern Europe. But since Soros has come to be associated with financing what is called the progressive movement, which includes Marxist and even pro-communist groups, could it be the case that conservative praise for Popper has been misplaced, and that some conservatives do not understand what Popper was really saying? The Hoover writer seems to allude to the possibility that conservatives may have been hoodwinked when he writes that, despite Popper's strong criticism of Marxism, historicism, and tendency towards totalitarianism, he was sympathetic to Marx's moral impulse. He quotes Popper as saying, "If there could be such a thing as socialism combined with individual liberty, I would be a socialist still, for nothing could be better than living a modest, simple, and free life in a egalitarian society. It took some time before I recognized this as no more than a beautiful dream, that freedom is more important than equality, that the attempt to realize equality endangers freedom, and that if freedom is lost, there will not even be equality among the unfree." This sounds like a broadside against socialism, but it is apparent that an alleged combination of socialism and liberty is precisely what Popper advocated and which attracts Soros to this day. It justifies his funding of progressive groups dedicated to a large federal role in the affairs of the American people. The Hecoen book puts it this way. Post-war liberals provided the intellectual core of the social democratic consensus prevailing in European politics until 1968. They overcame traditional apprehensions about a state-regulated economy and accepted a measure of socialization. Some were enthusiastic about social legislation and unsympathetic, at least until the 1970s. The libertarian Latanes. Popper's political philosophy articulated their social vision. He presented a piecemeal social engineering as an alternative to revolutionary socialism. No revolutionary transformation was necessary because unrestrained capitalism was gone. The Communist Manifesto's major goals were achieved and a framework for reforms existed. Marxism was superfluous. All right, I think I got to get back to my thing. Listen, I don't know how this is going to go, but we're in really deep trouble here, guys, in the States. The United States is being overthrown by basically a communistic faction. Our country could possibly be overthrown, and they don't even know it. The people that are participating in this, they don't realize that they are going towards a communistic socialism way of life, and that's not the America that we formed here. Okay, so let's see. What did they say in the 1930s? Okay, I don't want to even touch too much on prospects of revolution in the United States. More than once, they have discussed with their colleagues, Dr. Edmund A. Walsh, S.J., whose competence on problems of communism is widely acknowledged. The events to which remotely and proximately led up to the downfall of the Romanov dynasty in Russia. In the course of these conversations, it was revealed that those most concerned with the conduct of affairs under the empire were precisely the individuals who least expected catastrophe. The Tsar, the Tsarina, the court camarilla, Stumer, Protopopov, and the military commanders were caught up and submerged in the swift, irresistible tide of events before their eyes, had glimpsed the storm, signals flying from Archangel to Odessa. Nicholas II, for example, signed the decree of his own abdication before he was aware of the fact that the older order of things was faintly imperiled. Kerensky, in his turn, was being ushered from the Kremlin in disguise prior to any realization of the nature of the Bolshevik forces that had long planned the day and hour of his departure. And Rodzianko, president of the Duma in those stirring days, please forgive my lisp. As Rodzianko, president of the Duma in those stirring days, ironically remarked, in Russia everyone talked about the danger of revolution, and as a consequence no one was prepared for it. This is the first point of capital importance. There is a second, the technique by which the Soviets of workers and sailors undermined the vice-regency, which tried to maintain power without authority. From March 1917 to the triumph of Lenin in Red October in the same year. It's getting really scary here because so much is related to communism. A revolt becomes a revolution. Are we heading towards a revolution in this country and around the world? All in the name for the open society of George Soros and his pals that are working the United States on the left side, who've these people have created an army for themselves. That's the deep state. Your Antifa, your deep state are these people that have been organized in the name of liberal freedoms, and they don't understand that they're being overthrown, and the ultimate end will be is you're going to be living in a communistic socialism society. It's just, you don't want to go there. It did not work down in Argentina. It doesn't work around the world. It failed. You'll be controlled, limited. You won't have any freedoms under a communistic regime. You've got to really start to open your eyes and realize what road that they want to take you down. Half of the kids that are involved in this Antifa don't even know what they're there for. They're just along for the ride, most of them. Look at the flags that they're carrying. Look at how they're dressed. And then when they're unveiled, look at what you see. A lot of drug addicts, a lot of, weak-minded people. These kids are just lost. So they join up because it's part of the thing to do today. Why not? Hey, it's a lot of fun. You get paid to do it. They get paid. It's a private army, funded by George Soros and his gang. Okay, a revolt becomes a revolution. The story of these short 6 months, This is 1936. Let me make sure of that. 1936. The story of these short 6 months, March to October, is an epic of propaganda. Bread, peace, land, liberty were words of magic simplicity in winning over the peasants at the front of the workers in the munition factories on the banks of the Neva. Handbills were circulated among the soldiers, whether in garrison or in the field, giving explicit instructions for the defeat of military discipline. Soviets were organized in every regiment. As soon as a regiment was brought up to Petrograd to protect the existing regime, Bolshevik sympathizers among the female population of the capital were actively employed to beg the soldiers not to turn their rifles and machine guns upon their brothers and comrades. Of course, we don't want that. Every Bolshevik printing press was nightly pouring out incendiary material that was distributed before dawn. One newspaper would be suppressed only to have its place mysteriously supplied by another. Tons and tons of ink and paper started the avalanche that tore the Romanovs from their throne and Kerensky from his tribune. One loyal regiment, say the Preobrazhensky, would have sufficed to maintain order in the capital. That one regiment was won from all its allegiance by agitators, masters in the art of propaganda. What do you think is going on today, folks? All the propaganda. There's so much news out there, so many stories of this and that. I mean, it just, your head is just, you cannot wrap your head around any of these stories. Who's with who? Who's doing what? What's true? What's fake news? What's not fake news? It's very frightening because they're really playing on the minds of the uninformed, the people who have been totally out of touch with society for a long time. We have a broken society. Half of our youth hasn't been working for years, a decade or more. It's like a deliberate breakdown of society so that they can capture these minds of these generations of youth, really, to program them and pull them into their agenda. And that's what these left liberals, these communists, are doing and have been doing for a long time. In analyzing the prospects for revolution in the United States, therefore, one must begin with an appraisal of the Soviet prowess in the field of publication. What does the record show? Well, the record shows me that the press and the media is totally a monopoly, and their worldviews are being impressed upon the public on a daily, hourly, minute by minute, because they've got their phones right there. Kids are constantly reading propaganda. Millions of books and pamphlets are issued on thousands of Marxian, communist, socialist, atheist, and other subversive subjects in this country every year. The spearhead of this attack, of course, is the Daily Worker, published in New York. This daily newspaper, capably edited and efficiently managed, has shown a steady increase in circulation until now. Its output stands above the 42,000 mark. What is equally amazing is the fact that there are 300 other communist newspapers and magazines regularly circulated in factory and farm. They appear in most of the important foreign languages. First and second grade readers for small American children have been prepared. 200,000 of these textbooks have already been distributed. The most widely circulated single book is that by Joseph Stalin on Lenin and the Bolshevism. Red song books and playlists have been broadcast, many of them containing blasphemous slurs on the infinite majesty of God and unpatriotic aspirations on the United States Constitution and government. Some of the manuscripts for youth plays intended to burlesque the celebration of Lincoln's and Washington's birthdays are positively indecent. What did we just have go on in the other week with the Caesar play in New York, where they used the image of Trump as Caesar and they murdered him on stage in front of an audience and some cheered on. It's just absolutely absurd. Most of this literature is printed in publishing houses owned and operated by communist forces in New York City and elsewhere. Their bookstores are to be found in every city of any size, and when the would-be readers are slow in seeking out the red book salesman, the latter are quick to utilize the most modern methods of distribution. And that distribution, ladies and gentlemen, today is the internet and Facebook. It's getting frightening. Seditious agitation in the Army. During the recent Army maneuvers, for example, now this is all in 1936. Doesn't it just so relate to today? We're still fighting it today, but it really has developed into a major brainwashing social experiment. And it almost won. We almost lost America. During the recent Army maneuvers, for example, radical literature tending to undermine military discipline was dropped over the 3rd Corps area headquarters at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, by an airplane painted to resemble an Army plane. The pamphlet carried the masthead "The Soldier's Voice," Volume 2, Number 5, August 1935, and described itself as a special maneuver edition for regulars and guardsmen. It referred to General Douglas MacArthur, at that time Army Chief of Staff, as the baby killer of bonus Army fame. The soldiers were directed to form committees in every outfit to secure $30 base pay, no strike-breaking duty, and unemployment insurance. All men in uniform fight against war. Tell the right to fight to defend their own profits. Men in overalls unite with men in uniform against war, the pamphlet urged. Literature of a similarly subversive character was found on the seats of the coaches which brought Maryland guardsmen from Baltimore to the site of the maneuvers. It is a mere statement of fact to point out that this embodies perfectly the technique of Red Revolt. It is a technique that has to its credit the most thorough-going revolution in history. The communist appeal in the United States is addressed with equal emphasis to the industrial workers of our great cities and the men in khaki who have taken an oath to defend the nation. How well the American communists have learned the lessons. Who subsidizes communism? Is the propaganda of the party also backed by money? As one reads the diversified character of the far-flung Red Front in the United States, one conclusion becomes unmistakable. An organization can publish and circulate books, newspapers, and magazines, that can rent buildings for headquarters and schools in most large cities, that is able to control the program in 200 or more theaters, film laboratories, stores, trade agencies, bond agencies, and operate 30 or more camps, 3 of which are incorporated in New York State for $1 million. Must enjoy subsidies and revenues that are well in excess of $6 million a year. Certain people with money have made an investment in the American communist movement. Why has it been denied that a number of wealthy citizens in Los Angeles and San Francisco, California, including some picture stars in the so-called Rockefeller of the West Coast, contributed lavishly to the Red War Chest during the waterfront strikes last year, which would be 1935? Evidently, these backers of the Soviet consider the revolution a good risk. Perhaps they expect to get their stake back with dividends, inasmuch as the communists state in plain language that the first act of the Soviet government, when established in the United States, will be to confiscate all banks, factories, farms, property, savings, and business. This was happening in our present day. Thank God Trump came in here. He's given back the land to the people. I think it's just all twisted and people just don't understand it. And they're trying to, there is a large group out there fighting against, the freedoms and liberties of the United States. They don't realize they're fighting for the wrong things. They've all been blindsided. In view of a multiple activity of the Communist Party in the United States, it is fortunate indeed that the organization has shown little power to develop leaders of genius. In the Democratic Party, a lot of them are ignorant and dangerous people. Just outright dangerous people. Corrupt, So, in view of the multiple activity of the Communist Party in the United States, it is fortunate indeed that the organization has shown little power to develop leaders of genius. Hello. The resources at the command of the communist agitators in New York City alone are such as would have filled the heart of Lenin and Trotsky with envy. Their task in Imperial Russia was undertaken with a relatively infinitesimal modicum of material wealth. The American endowment of men, however, is pitifully weak. Ah, there we go. The demasculation of our men. The American endowment of men, however, is pitifully weak. But how long will this condition endure? Is not the communist preoccupation with youth an indication of what may be expected in the future? Given the duly qualified leaders in American communism will emerge from the back alleys and underground caverns into the light of the boulevards, if it does not establish itself in the great offices of state. Pause on that. The plan of a revolution. That's what they're doing. This is a revolution we're seeing. They're trying to overthrow our government. A plan for such a development has been fully elaborated. One of the printed documents confiscated during the Minneapolis truck strike a year ago, last summer, 1935 now, set forth detailed suggestions for a nationwide strike to be transformed into a civil war, for the erection of barricades in the streets of all the principal cities, for the seizure of telephone and telegraph wires, the confiscation of the chief radio stations and principal airlines, for the occupation of federal government buildings such as the post offices and Internal Revenue headquarters, for the arrest of the President of the United States and his cabinet to be superseded by a ruthless Stalin type of dictator. This is what's going on. This is what we are seeing today. All of this. They're occupying our streets. They're barricading our highways, our streets. They're running amok through. Jesus, doesn't this sound just like today? Boy, how they touched upon the Rockefeller of the West Coast, Los Angeles and San Francisco, Hollywood, stars and actors, New York, a central base for the communists. It all makes plain sense as what's been developing over time has now become the norm, and they think that that's the norm of the party, but all will be taken from you. You don't understand that what you're fighting for, what you think you're fighting for, is not what you're going to get as an end result. You're going to lose it all. Wake up. This sounds fantastic. Okay, I'm going to read this again. A plan of revolution. A plan for such a development has been fully elaborated. One of the printed documents confiscated during the Minneapolis truck strike a year ago, in 1935, last summer, set forth detailed suggestions for a nationwide strike to be transformed into a civil war, for the erection of barricades in the streets of all principal cities, for the seizure of telephone and telegraph wires, the confiscation of the chief radio stations and principal airlines, for the occupation of federal government buildings such as the post offices and Internal Revenue headquarters, for the arrest of the President of the United States and his cabinet to be superseded by a ruthless Stalin type of dictator. Now, what do you think Obama's been trying to do? All right, the election is over. Hillary Clinton lost the election. His clone, who would follow the same things and take us down a deep, dark road, the deep state. Okay, he doesn't go away as most presidents should, get out of the limelight so that the current president can pick up the pieces and get the country back on its feet again. No, he comes back. He goes into Chicago, goes on YouTube with his wife and says, "We haven't gone anywhere. We're here. We're still here, and we're organizing. And we're going to have all these little centers in every state, and major cities, so that you can come and tell us what your problems are, and we will help you." Obama is a communist. Period. Working for the deep state. I believe that with all my heart. With his network of little centers he's told everybody that he's opened, you can come to us, we'll help you out, in every city and major city and state. It's so obvious what they're doing. Who would be that dictator? Who do you think it would have been that would have taken over? What are they're trying to do? Is they're trying to impeach President Trump for what? What did he do? He didn't do anything. He's the one who's done more for this country than any president in a couple of decades. Clinton's corrupt. Bush, hello, another corrupt one. I will not deny. I can't deny that. No, they're all in the same game. This sounds fantastic until it is recalled that a much more difficult operation was planned and executed in Petrograd in the summer and autumn of 1917. So they keep playing this merry-go-round thing. This keeps, they're working it and working it until they get it. And they're never going to get it because we can't let them have it because we won't have a goddamn country. There are 6 times as many active members in the Communist Party and its affiliated movements in the United States today, oh great, as there were in Russia at the time of the Red October uprising that led to an inauguration of the Union of Socialist and Soviet Republics. To put the case even more bluntly, it should be stated that there are today twice as many members in the communist and affiliated groups in this country as there are at present in the Communist Party in Russia, with subjects 168 million Russians to enslavement and exploitation by armed force. The gravity of the communistic threat to our religious, social, and civil institutions calls for intelligent, concerted, persevering action. And that's what we're doing. We have to preserve what we have here in the United States. They want this open society. They want to integrate all of these. We're going to all lose our identities. Look what's happened in Sweden, the UK. They destabilized the Middle East on purpose. They unleashed in the Middle East an army of backwards, sadistic, ancient, barbaric groups into the European nations, toppling them, taking over, swarming in like little ants, all young men at first. Where were the women and children? They were all young men. And what did we see happen? They just ran havoc through the streets. That was all orchestrated. That was meant to be. And then you've got the merge of the Antifa groups, who are actually a lot of these, Middle Eastern men too. It's just it's really frightening. To all of you who think that these, like reading this stuff is, silly of me, no, it's something you have to understand, that they've been trying to do this for a long time, and it's just been transformed over the years to make it look like the norm. But the big awakening would be, okay, we see today the media being taken over. The narrative is always the left, the right, the Republicans of today are the devils, the ones that want to control you, the elite. It's not. It's the sensible people now. The independent people are literally very much awake, and we're not going to allow what you're trying to do. So what I just said, okay, they will take over if we don't stop them, and we have to. It's unbelievable. Friggin' scary. Kids don't even know what they're doing out there, running the streets. They just get a paycheck and think that they're doing something good, meaningful, and it's not. Really think about, everybody wants to help people. I don't want to see a family starve. I don't want to see head of a household, the father, not be able to have a job to support his family. I don't want his wife to not feel like she can be instrumental in society and working herself and making something of herself. You don't belittle a woman. But this feminist movement, they've got it all bent out. You can wear vaginas on your head if you want, but it does not. I don't know. It's all fucked up. We want to help people. We want to have them working. The objective here, as far as the present communistic left liberal party, is to take down the United States, do the deeds of the deep state, George Soros with his open society, so that he can overthrow everything that you know. You will lose your identity as an American citizen and your freedoms and liberties. You will hear what they want you to hear. You will eat what they want you to eat. You will do as you are told. There will be no freedoms. They're fooling you. You have to wake up to this and understand it. You must be able to see it all unfolding. Why are they so bent on toppling Trump? Trump's a great businessman, a builder. He saw what was happening, and he stepped up to the plate. He didn't have to do this. His family, they didn't have to join in on this. There was something really wrong with this country, and he saw it, and thank God he did, and that the people that are standing behind him see it as well. We have a dangerous group of people that we have to throw over the edge, basically. So it's either them or us. Because they don't know what they're doing. The more people we get into this country that are impoverished, why aren't they fixing the countries around the world where these people are coming from? If they have so much money and they want to have these wonderful freedoms and liberties, sharing, why aren't they straightening out the problems in those countries where those people are coming from? Because, see, they want people to believe in government. That's what Schumer wants. Big government. You need the government because you don't know how to handle your own matters. You need us. Him. His little gang. They're the leaders of this communist party, the liberal lefts. They're the ones who have got something to gain from it, not you. They're going to take it from you. But they'll play it up as if like you're going to have, a wonderful world, and you're not. The country would have fallen if Trump didn't get in. It's so obvious what the left is trying to do. And the thing is, they aren't that good at it. They messed up. They fucked up. They got caught at their own game. And they're being exposed. Thank goodness. There's so much crap going on right now. It's unbelievable. It's hard to decipher what's real, what's not. You have to just read everything and hope that you get something from someone's mouth that you believe is telling the truth. Very hard. Very hard to define. And I understand how so many could be taken down that dark road. That phony road of, we need to be free. Don't you? Those Republicans are dirty, nasty people. Listen to the senator from Massachusetts. Unbelievable. The things that are coming from half of these people's mouths. Most of these people actually were funded at one time by Trump. They'd give them, like, oh, sure, I'll contribute to this and that one. And he wanted to help people. But he saw on the inside. And he didn't like it. And it's going to be stopped. Let's see, let me find something else. It was a scene straight out of the 1950s, but the year was 2017. Travis Allen, a Republican from Southern California, took to the floor of the state assembly on May 8th to denounce communism. Why did he do that? Okay. He said, to allow subversives and avowed communists to now work for the state of California, he railed, is a direct insult to the people of California who pay for that government. Allen was speaking out against a move to remove language from the California Code that bars members of the Communist Party from holding government jobs in the state. Anti-communist language remains on the books in several states and in California, at least. It's not going anywhere. After facing backlash from Republicans, veterans, and Vietnamese American community, the bill's sponsor, the Democratic Assemblyman Rob Bonta, announced last week that he would not move forward with the bill. Who said it? Tech CEO or communist leader? Take our quiz. I've been called a commie. I've been told to go back to China. I've had death threats, Bonta told The Guardian. He described as ironic and curious the fact that one of his Republican opponents was wrapping himself in the flag while supporting a law that blatantly violates our First Amendment rights. But the thing is, he is a commie. But said he respected the emotions that the issue had raised for refugees from communist regimes. See, these people have come from communist countries. And so that's the norm to them. Except they have a little bit, they think a little bit more freedom. It's just a different atmosphere, but the same environment politically. With intrigue about Russia driving the daily news cycle, Cold War sentiments are bubbling up again, despite the fact that our erstwhile adversary is decidedly capitalist these days. It's a marked reversal from just a year ago, when an astonishing number of Americans embraced the candidacy of a self-identified socialist, and a reminder of how deep anti-communist suspicion runs through the American psyche. Bonta is not the first legislator to fail in an attempt to drag state laws into the 21st century. A similar effort was made in California in 2008, when a bill passed only to be voted by the then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. I see no compelling reason to change the law that maintains our responsibility to ensure that public resources are not used for purposes of overthrowing the U.S. or state government, or for communist activities, the governor wrote in his veto statement. So what he was trying to do is Allen was speaking out against a move to remove language from the California Code that bars members of the Communist Party from holding government jobs in the state. So Schwarzenegger, he didn't allow that to be removed either. Arizona lawmakers voted in 2003 to update the state's loyalty oath. Now, instead of swearing they are not members of the Communist Party, elected officials and public employees must vow not to be terrorists. Candidates for elected office in Illinois still receive a loyalty oath when they register to run, but filling it out is optional. Chicago, Illinois, go figure. Pennsylvania stopped requiring candidates to sign a loyalty oath in 2006 after a Socialist Worker Party candidate objected. So this loyalty thing, are you loyal to me? President Trump does ask. Sure I am. I am loyal to him because he has the heart and the interest of the United States and the Constitution first. While these Red Scare relics can seem comical, Michael Reicher of the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California said they could still have serious consequences. Occasionally, someone will dredge them up and use them to try to scare people, to stop them from speaking out, he said. In 2006, he recalled a California legislator asked the state attorney general whether an anti-subversive law could be used to go after Mexican-American student activists. At the time, there was a considerable right-wing suspicion about the student group MECA, Movimiento Estudiantil Gigantes de Aztlan, whatever, and its supposed goal of reconquista or returning California and other parts of the Southwest to Mexico. The danger is not so much that someone will be sentenced to life in prison, but that they will be restrained from doing something they will do otherwise do. In New York City, a public school principal has been placed under investigation over allegations of recruiting students to join the Progressive Labor Party, a communist group. The principal, Jill Bloomberg, is an outspoken critic of racial inequality in the school system, and she has sued the city's Department of Education for violating her civil rights. Well, people better wake up, because if you were in a communist society, you wouldn't have any civil rights. Communist Party members may still be barred from U.S. citizenship. Great. Bloomberg accused the school district of using a tactic that people have used for years to discredit very, very legitimate anti-racist fight back, to cast it as communism, as if that automatically discredits it. She is not a member of the communist group, she said, but if I were, it would not be illegal or a violation of the school's regulation. This is what we're dealing with today. We've got a really, really messed up group of people. It's just you know that saying, the melting pot, the pot's boiling over. Either way, she said the investigation had placed a pall over her school as teachers second guess their ability to speak freely to their students. If you're teaching the Harlem Renaissance and the Civil Rights Movement, can you say Paul Robeson was proud to be a member of the Communist Party, she asked? Or can you only talk about communism if you present it as a negative? I don't know. Chuck Schumer, okay, spoke on November 25th, 2014 at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. about why the Democrats lost in the midterm elections and how they can rebuild the party to win the White House and take back Congress in 2016. Ultimately, the public knows in its gut that a strong and active government is the only way to reverse the middle class decline and help revive the American dream, Schumer said in a speech described as his plan for the Democrats to recover from their midterm election losses by winning the White House and taking back Congress in 2016. In his more than 50-minute speech, Schumer used the word government more than 100 times and repeatedly said the Democrats need to embrace government in order to become the majority party for a generation. See, he's pushing this agenda. Embrace government. You need government. Government. Citing the diametrically opposing ideas on how to increase wages for the middle class, Schumer said Republicans want to give private sector forces even more power. Schumer said the Democrats have to remind Americans that they need an active and committed government that is on your side to protect them from things like technology and globalization. To protect them from things like technology and globalization? That's bullshit. People know in their hearts that when big, powerful private sector forces degrade their lifestyle, only government can protect them, he said. This is Schumer, okay? Schumer called for Democrats to support education, progressive taxes, to put domestic industries on a level playing field with their global competitors. This is globalization. And advance labor unions to allow workers. Now, if you all remember what we just talked about the labor unions have infiltrated all of these things to allow workers to bargain for a greater share of their company's wealth. The only way to achieve these ends is government, Schumer said. The private sector left on its own cannot. They're telling the people, you aren't able to do anything yourselves. They are weakening the minds, the backbone of the people in the United States. They're really weakening their confidence in themselves. Well, maybe we really do need them. Maybe, big government is good. And what do you think Obama was doing? He was handing out phones, free phones for everybody so that they could all hear. It's like I'd say Nazis. That's Nazism. Propaganda. Give them the phones so that they communicate. But then they can shut them off at any time. They'll give them what they want for so long. They get all riled up. They live on this free ride for so long, and they don't know what's coming. Even this past election, a debacle for Democrats, was not a repudiation of government, Schumer said, and in fact shows that we are the favorites for 2016 if we produce a believable pro-government message. You had no message. That's the thing. Schumer predicted that if Democrats come up with the right agenda, they will not only win elections, but will capture America and its imagination for the next generation. Charles Schumer was born into a Jewish family on November 23rd, 1950, in Brooklyn, New York, where he was raised. He campaigned for Democratic presidential candidate Eugene McCarthy in 1968. He went on to earn an AB from Harvard University in 1971 and a JD from Harvard Law School in 74. He passed the New York State bar exam in 75 but never practiced law, pursuing instead a career in politics. So he never really practiced law. After serving 3 terms in the New York State Assembly from 1974 to 1980, Schumer was elected in 1980 to represent New York's 16th congressional district, defeating 3-term Republican incumbent Alfonso D'Amato. During Schumer's tenure in 1981-1999 in the U.S. House of Representatives, his district was renumbered twice, as the 10th in 1983 and the 9th in 1993. So he had his district renumbered twice. In 1994, Schumer and California Senator Dianne Feinstein authored the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act, commonly known as the Federal Assault Weapons Ban, a 10-year statute that outlawed semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, and handguns possessing certain features. That was just the start of, so here they're trying to tell you how much big government, you need them. They're weakening the citizens of the United States, and telling them how much they need them. You need the government, and now they're trying to disarm them. They were trying to disarm us. Where if that would be the end of it, we would not. That if we had a civil war, we wouldn't be able to protect ourselves. Like in Australia and the UK, the police run around with little sticks, and that's about it. And they can't defend themselves. No way. By Schumer's calculus, to bring Moscow on board, we must make it an offer it cannot refuse. A key component of such an offer, he said, would be for the U.S. to abandon the Bush administration's plan. A plan that greatly displeased Russia. To build a missile defense system in Eastern Europe, wrote Schumer. 2 years ago, under NATO auspices, Poland and the Czech Republic and Romania agreed to build an anti-missile defense site to thwart the threat of a nuclear missile attack by Iran. The threat is hypothetical and remote, and the Bush administration's emphasis on pursuing the anti-missile system without Russia's cooperation still baffles many national security experts. It also drives Putin to apoplexy. The anti-missile system strengthens the relationship between Eastern Europe and NATO with real troops and equipment on the ground. It mocks Putin's dream of eventually restoring Russian hegemony over Eastern European, dismantling the anti-missile site, economic incentives, and creation of a diplomatic partnership in the region in exchange for joining an economic boycott of Iran is an offer Putin would find hard to refuse. Barack Obama has abandoned the controversial Pentagon plan to build a missile defense system in Europe. We're in real trouble, people. Thank God for Trump. That's all I can say. Do you know that, Schumer, God, he's a bad dude. Soros is a bad dude. They're all in it together. You just have to really, really do some reading, some history seeking. See how things were before, and that, how things turned around. But we were really on a terrible journey. The Democrats were. Anyways, I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent, I guess. Hey, I do what I want to do. I want my freedoms. I want a lot of the things that they want. But you see, they don't understand that was going to be ripped away from them once that the people, that the government got what they want. You'd lose it all. Wouldn't be. Look what they're doing with this tiny house nation. You won't own land. You're going to be like the pioneers, like corralling around in circles and having nowhere, no land of your own. They're going to round you up. Be aware of what's happening. You gotta think we're on the verge of a civil war. Um, uh, Actually, probably a world war three. I don't know. Post-war liberals provided the intellectual core of the social democratic consensus prevailing in European politics until 1968. Papa was a young Marxist. That's who Soros looked up to. He opposed organized religion, including Judaism and Christianity. This is George Soros's mentor, the guy that he looked up to. Papa was a young Marxist. He opposed organized religion, including Judaism and Christianity, which he considered examples of closed thinking. He thought institutional Christianity, such as the Church of the Popes, had totalitarian impulses. He advocated a protectionist theory of justice to protect the weak from the strong on the national and even global levels. So you see where this global thing, George Soros is designing his own little society that he wants, his little design. We've got like these little Dr. Evils. It's for real. Um, Popper recognized the sincerity of Marx, noting his open-mindedness, his sense of facts, his distrust of verbiage, and his burning desire to help the oppressed. Yeah, bullshit. Popper attacked Marx because of his belief in historical determinism and philosophy of history, which held that communism would follow from the dialectic struggle of opposing forces. Popper, in his book *The Open Society and Its Enemies*, Volume 2, explicitly endorses the Keynesian theory in favor of government intervention in the economy. Popper favored piecemeal social engineering rather than utopian or holistic government intervention. So they are piecemealing this. There's a social engineering going on, and a lot of people are unaware of it, but it really is happening. Social engineering around the globe is happening. It's on a massive scale. It should be emphasized that although he expresses concern about the dangers of dramatically increasing governmental power through an activist interventionist policy, Popper is totally confident that the dangers can be mastered by social technology and social piecemeal engineering. He is closed, for example, to revelation as a self-disclosure of the divine through the flash of eternity into time. Hence, Popper rejects the authority of the New Old Testaments and the possibility that God has intervened in human affairs through the figure of Jesus Christ and has a plan that is unfolding in human history. It is interesting and significant that Professor Germano also wrote the book Antonio Gramsci, Architect of the New Politics, about the Italian communists. Jesus. It is so layered what's going on here. It's just extremely alarming. Chandler isn't the only observer who sees such a trend in Soros giving. I am a democratic socialist, Maggie declares, and I believe that the young Popper worked out, as no one else has ever done, what the philosophical foundations of democratic socialism should be. According to Dr. Spencer Davis, author of a major paper on Popper, 6, the following is known about Soros's mentor. Born in 1902, Popper in 1918 joined the Free Association of Socialist High School Students. In 1991, its leader became communist, and Popper, though he may not have joined the Communist Party in Austria, began working at its headquarters as an office boy. Popper left the party because he concluded that its leaders treated party members from the working class as pawns, which is happening today. The American people, are pawns, to maneuver, and showed little concern when workers died in a conflict of leaders orchestrated. They are orchestrating so much, and it's going right over your heads. Popper's first publications in the 1920s were attempts to clarify the basis for socialist school reforms. Popper was for several years committed to that movement and taught in a progressive school. While Popper was writing his single work in political philosophy, The Open Society and Its Enemies, And while the manuscript grew and the outcome of the World War II was still in doubt, Papa refused to attack Stalin and Stalinist totalitarianism. Papa pictured the open society as the liberal interventionist democracy that is usually described as a democratic welfare state. He recommended piecemeal social engineering. One notices that both Germano and Davis find themselves, whatever. We got a real problem. Well, I hope that concludes today's reading of the Holy Communistic Party. Oh, God. Well, I had to read it. This is stuff that has to be read. So many questions. And just shows you how certain people can control, like the government can control the lives of so many people. And they don't even realize what's happening. They just follow like little ants. One by one. Yes, yes, yes. It's amazing how so few can control the masses. But it happens. It's happened from over and over again in history. And that's what's happening today. We have a group of people that want to control your lives and take it over. But first they feed you these things and they tell you these things. They give you things to pull you into their ideals. This is what you want. They tell you what you want. They tell you what you need. Not what you want. They tell you what you need. You need them. You don't know how to think for yourselves. So you need us. You need the government. Big government. That's what the Democrats want. And that's what Schumer's all about. And Clinton. But see, if she was president, if she did get president, she was going to be the empress of the global economy. She wasn't going to be president. She wanted to become an empress. God, it's so messed up. We almost lost America. Don't let it happen. Everybody stand up. Think about it. Think about what you're standing for. Isn't it a little messed up? Don't you think? People running through the streets, protesting, firestorming cities, and bullying, and you know what's going on. Just open your eyes. Pay attention. Don't get hoodwinked into the lefty liberal propaganda crap. Your internet, your mainstream media, your newspapers, your elected officials are all messed up and part of this communistic faction, this action, this thing that they're trying to pull you into. Don't let it happen, people. Save America. God bless America. God bless our president. Thank God for Trump. I know that a lot of people don't like to hear any of this stuff, but you really should understand. Defending faith. I often think about what's going on in the church as well. I'm not too happy with what's between what went on between Obama and the Pope, and I know you're not supposed to speak bad about the Pope or the church or this or that, but I'll tell you, it's very obvious what's been going on with them too. It's frightening. It's very frightening to even think about. You have to consider what's going on in the Vatican with the Pope. I know he to have a totally unbiased, of course, for all the people. He basically is the representative of God, but he is still a human, and he's still immortal. And there have been some bad popes, and there's a lot of power being a pope and being in the church. There's a lot of money involved and influence. So, in our times, perhaps more than ever before, there is need for us to defend the name of Christ and his claims upon mankind. In so many nations today, there have been truly dreadful waves of a pagan rationalism, and principles destructive of every moral authority have been spread abroad. There is resounding through the world just now the voice of our Holy Father, who only last Monday, 1936, Monday morning, so eloquently proclaimed, "The very foundations of all order, all culture, and all civilization are being menaced. Human folly has gone so far as to cry out for the exile of Christ. Instead, he is the central figure of human history and must remain the first citizen of every country, the contemporary of every age, and the savior of every century. Jesus Christ yesterday and today, and the same forever." America seems in truth far removed from these destructive movements, but nonetheless there are many here who remain indifferent to this great name of Jesus, which is above all names. Philip, a religious indifference sooner or later resolves itself into the abandonment of virtue. History teaches us that there follow from its disastrous social consequences. Yeah, it's true. From falling away from all that, there are social consequences. Those are the consequences you should be concerned of. The situation demands that our age become better acquainted with Jesus Christ and his revelation, and this is the special Catholic action of the Holy Name Society. I always said I felt bad for children who didn't have, or people who didn't have a faith or believed in Jesus Christ. I do. I happen to be one of those that I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. And they didn't have anybody to talk to if they didn't believe in them. They were empty inside, void. But then when someone knew of them, when someone would become acquainted with Jesus Christ, not in a fanatical way, they would become happy and whole again. To profess the name of Jesus is publicly to proclaim Christianity, its truths, its sacraments, and its principles of morality. To speak the name of Jesus is to make a declaration of faith in incarnation in the Church, in its visible head, St. Peter, and his successors in the priesthood. To pronounce the name of Jesus is openly to recall the Good Shepherd who came forth from heaven in quest of our souls. To keep in mind his lovable traits and attractive character, to remember the greatness of his love for us and the extremes of his poverty, to be reminded of his humiliations and sufferings, his passion and death, as well as to think again of our own ransom and the only hope we have of eternal life. To say Jesus with faith and love is once again to put on Christ, to be inspired by his maxims, his meekness and his loving mercy, to participate with him in the sorrows of others and in their joys, to share with our neighbor the goodness and the peace of Christ, even to inspire the noblest ideals of service to God and country, and to rally our neighbor to the defense of the sacred interests of true religion and of true patriotism. Letter of the Cardinal Secretary of State by Cardinal Hayes, August 19th, 1936, that was written. The name of Jesus is the source of this Catholic action, and remains ever the fountainhead of Catholic inspiration. The circumstances in which it was conferred upon the Son of God are worthy of our intention. He received it with the first shedding of his precious blood in the rite of circumcision. Jewish. Jesus wished to manifest himself at once as our Savior. At the same time, he makes us understand that a noble name is not acquired, nor can it be worthily borne without sacrifice. Whosoever wishes to be worthy of his name must deny himself, take upon his cross, and follow him, whether in time of peace or in the hour of struggle, even if need be in the heroism of martyrdom. Yeek. Well. Organize in every parish, God in chaos. I want to express just a word of thanks to the head of the department. It is not so very long ago when the misguided individual that desired to say, "There is no God," crawled off into a corner and said it to himself. He whispered it. He was afraid of being heard. But that is not so today. Things have changed, and it is being proclaimed that from the rooftops in some of the great marketplaces of the world. Well, what right have we to expect anything else? Why should we expect it to be any different? Well, That concludes today's reading from the Holy Scripture of Communism, I guess. Maybe I'll do something else, like read something happy next time. I think some people would like that. Maybe I'll start reading some fairy tales because fairy tales seem to be a little bit more enjoyable these days from the truth. All right, everybody. Have a good day, and I wish you all good luck. And keep your heads up and stay awake and try and have a level headed mind about yourself and, watch what's going on there. Don't believe everything that you read in the papers or read on the internet. History repeats itself, though, and I see that happening here. So, okay, I'll be talking to you frankly later.